Hello. Hello. Welcome to Real Talk.
Thank you, thank you. So, I'm sorry. So you just keep going?
Yeah, introduce yourself.
Okay, so hello. Am I talking to you or am I talking to everyone?
We're just talking real talk. This is unfiltered, unedited conversation. This is as real as it gets.
All right, cool. So I'll just talk to you because I'm talking. So, hello, I'm Janelle. I know you, Jamie. I am a student at the University of Buffalo, and I'm really passionate about making a change and an impact in the world, and I'm really interested in learning about different perspectives and educating others on things that are going on in the world. And I want people to have a voice and the opportunity to speak about issues that are going on in our world because it affects us every day. That's kind of like a long-winded tell me about yourself.
Not at all. That's perfect. And Janelle, I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing because now more than ever we need to use digital tools to share conversations like this and create a safe space for vulnerable conversations.
The safe space is like really important because a big part of what Real Talk is we want to keep things confidential because people may share perspectives or experiences that they've had that's kind of deep to the heart, so we don't want people to broadcast it or share it. So confidentiality is a big thing.
Absolutely. And in terms of safe space, it's so interesting because some of us might feel that social media is a safe space. However, in your perspective, how do you determine safe space online?
So social media, safe space, I guess in some aspects it is, in some aspects it's not. Like if I think of Instagram, I'm thinking that's like to the public. Yeah, you can have your account private, but like people you follow, who they follow, they can see it and they can like it, they can not like it, and they can judge you from the background. So safe space to me, like in terms of like a discussion on Zoom or an online platform like Skype, I think it's more intimate because you're seeing people face to face and you're putting a face to the name. So you kind of have that human interaction without being in person with each other through Zoom or any type of virtual setting.
I love that you mentioned that because video chat is so helpful, and I'm interested to see how video chat and virtual conversations will evolve with technology over time. Because things like eye contact, and I'm so grateful that we're able to have this conversation in real life, like in person, we're really here. It's just so special because eye contact has been lost in the virtual age, and yes, we can video chat, but even now it's so challenging because it's like I want to make eye contact with the person I'm video chatting with, but I want to look like I'm making eye contact, I need to look at the video cam and not them, because if it looks like I'm looking at them, it looks like I'm looking off to the side. And there's just so much like uncharted territory here.
Absolutely. And like even though we're not in person, like through virtual settings, the things like body language are really important. Things like, I mean, it's awkward because like when you're talking, it's hard to read someone because you can go to talk and then the other person could be talking, so it's like, oh, sorry, go ahead. But I think the way the world adapted to it, it's getting better. People are kind of working with the norms, and it's really helpful in communicating.
I appreciate that you said the way the world's adapting, because right now, more than ever, especially with COVID and everything, we're forcing ourselves to adapt and evolve in these times.
Absolutely, and I think it's important. It's important to, unfortunately, things happen, but I think it's important for us to adapt to things, and I think we're doing a good job. We're forced to, but it's working out, I think.
Absolutely. So from your perspective, going to school, how do you see the world evolving for the better in the future?
In like the virtual setting? So being a student and in a virtual setting, I mean, it's not ideal. Of course you want to go to school and be present and get that live experience, But I think being a student, there's a lot of opportunities. Like, for example, my current internship, I work with my school's global programs department, and we're trying to make a virtual experience. So we're kind of looking for new and creative resources to create engagement and interactiveness for the students, so it doesn't feel like, oh, just another Zoom session or Zoom class. And I think a lot of classes are adapting to this and trying to find interactive tools like Kahoot. So it's like a competition platform where people go on a website, type a code, and they answer questions. It's like, it's fun. It's like you get to see the results on screen, to see who's the winner. So things like that keep the sessions engaged. And tools like the breakout rooms. The breakout rooms I found are very helpful in the sense that you can get a smaller group of people, talk about something, come back to the main room, have a couple laughs because you were just in the breakout room, and it's kind of like you had to be there kind of moment. So I think that in that sense it's adapting, and that's how it's going to move. And even after, hopefully soon, post-COVID, there will be options. I know specifically for global programs for people who have disabilities who can't travel. This could be a way to integrate this virtual setting so that they can travel virtually, and it creates more opportunities for them. Or let's say a student has like 3 kids at home and nobody's able to watch them. So there's like opportunity. This is kind of like an opportunity and a blessing. So yeah.
I appreciate that so much because although there's so many instrumental challenges and we are all struggling, it's an opportunity to expand outside of our comfort zone and find new solutions that are serving a need for all of those markets.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's just the way it is right now. And being here, I mean, specifically for the US, I think we're really known for just adapting to the situations, and it's going to work out for the better.
I love the optimism. It's so beyond needed.
It is, yeah, it really is. Because, I mean, you have people who are Debbie Downers, but if you see the positive in things, then you feel better, to be honest. It's just like an energy and a vibe.
The energy exchange is so real. And I'm curious to learn more about when you mentioned the experiences that you're creating with this global program. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, so we have 3 international trips. We have East Asia, we have India, and we have Ghana. I've had the opportunity to travel to Ghana this past winter in person. So we're trying to recreate the cultural aspect in a virtual setting by having language classes, cooking, dancing classes, which I think is going to be really fun to see everybody just like dancing behind the screen live. And then we have Experience the 50, which is domestic trips, and that's more of like networking with professionals, with alumni, learning skills, and yeah, so it's really just trying to replicate it without actually being there. It's tough, but we're working with vendors and other third-party people who are in the actual country or state itself to kind of get that feel and that experience.
I love that you're able to bring the culture through the virtual setting. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like a prep before you go. So you gotta get a little experience, and then when COVID's over, then you go and you're like, oh, I remember this from class. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So from hosting these events, what is something that you learned that you weren't expecting?
From hosting the events, something I learned I wasn't expecting, I guess the time that goes into it and being adaptable. So we hosted a 2-week session with students from Ghana and Latvia, and I had to be quick on my feet, especially with managing the breakout rooms and Zoom, and if somebody had a question, then the chat features, and we're also using like interactive platforms where students answer questions on their phone that goes to the presentation. So it's kind of adaptability has definitely helped, and I'm really grateful for it because it's a blessing in disguise.
That's so important. I love it. So for people that are looking to use virtual tools to encompass a safe space for real conversations, what advice do you have for them?
I would say be open, because in this new world, it's really important to be receptive to other opinions, and because everyone is different. Everyone grew up different, they have different values. And the Real Talk platform that I was telling you about is really to encourage people to come together and have this discussion, because I thought about it and I'm like, maybe people don't have the opportunity to talk about this stuff. Maybe they find it difficult to talk about it with their family, with their friends. Maybe they just don't know how to. There's so many reasons why people don't talk about issues that are going on in our world today. And the Real Talk platform is to give that safe space that we were talking about earlier, for them to come together. And like I mentioned before, to learn from other people, to educate other people on just your personal experiences, and to vent. And I think it's really important to listen to each other, because everyone has something valuable to say, even if you don't agree with it. I think it's important to be respectful and hear it out and try to think of the other point of view instead of your own.
It's so needed. Like, everybody needs it.
Yeah, absolutely. And recently I tried to start talking about things like this in live settings. So I went out to dinner last night and I talked about it with a stranger, like a stranger that was at the table. And, you know, it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad conversation. And usually stuff like this is kind of like hush hush. It's not appropriate. It's not normal to talk about this stuff. You're at a dinner table. But I want to start the conversation and normalize it, because it's important. It's our world, and we should be able to talk about it without feeling like, oh, you're talking about this again. Yeah.
I appreciate that so much, and I want to honor the courage that it takes to be vulnerable and start these needed conversations.
Yeah. Vulnerability is big, and for me, like, I'd say like a couple years ago or a year ago or a couple months ago even, I myself would have a difficult time talking about these things. But I think it's more about how you do it and how you approach it that's really important. And in a digital setting, it's important to allow everyone to speak, because people could talk over each other. It could be Wi-Fi issues. It could be so many issues. But with the Real Talk platform, the real setup of it is each person would talk for 60 seconds about a prompt that is on the middle of the screen. So for example, let's say the prompt was all lives matter. How do you feel about that? Each person will go around in a circle for 60 seconds. General thoughts. What does it mean to them? And once everyone goes for like a minute, now it's open discussion. Hey, I want to talk about what you said about all lives matter. Yes, it's true, but do you think it defeats the purpose of Black Lives Matter and things like that? Because everyone should have the opportunity to speak, and it could be difficult in the virtual setting, so that's why the platform kind of gives everyone that opportunity too, before everyone just jumps on one thing or one person. So yeah.
And I appreciate the opportunity to educate around these topics. Something that was so mind-blowing to me was realizing how everyone's education, especially based on the location, is completely different, especially in regards to history, and that the winners write history. And it makes me want to speak up and empower this real talk conversation around the globe. Let's collectively come together and have these conversations about what happened, how can we learn from history, and use this knowledge to evolve together as a united nation.
Absolutely. We're called the United States of America. So I think it's really important. And to touch on the education portion, that's really, I think it's interesting how, you know, different people learn different things, and like how the education system is itself. Like, for example, are you familiar with Juneteenth? So I didn't know about that as a Black woman, I didn't know about that until college. I'm like, how do I not even know about my own history? I'm like, why didn't they teach this? And I think it's very specific in what they teach, in the sense that it's like, these people, you know, they came here, bad stuff happened to them, but like, look at all the great stuff that other people did, and it kind of just dismisses the fact and just brushes over it. So that, I think that's an issue too, because I'd like to know more, because I feel like people of color are a big part of the United States history, and I think it should be recognized more.
There's so many things and layers for what you said, and I just want to honor and respect every layer and depth of it. And I'm curious how we can rechannel this energy in the frustration and opportunity, because it's not just the US, it's the whole world. And how can we come together to educate and empower? Because now anyone with Wi-Fi has access, and YouTube University, we really can rewrite everything. So how can we do that in a way that's inclusive and gives voice and honor to everyone, not just the winners?
I think the first step is really just starting the conversation, because people are not even willing to talk about it because of all the reasons I mentioned before. You know, they don't know what to say, they're scared, they are afraid they may say something wrong. And I mean, there are things like I'm not really familiar with, or like things that I'm not 100% educated on. But I think it's my responsibility to do the research on it, follow up on it, and I think it's a part of everyone's responsibility. If you don't know about it, do research, but don't make assumptions on it. But to talk about what you said before, like, this is an issue everywhere. When I went to Costa Rica last spring, like, they experienced racism as well, and you would think of, you know, a place with so much color, you wouldn't, but like, it's similar in the sense that people with dark skin are looked at more inferior, similar to the US. When I did go to Africa, I noticed, you know, majority of it is people of color, and I noticed it was more of like a class instead of racism. It was more like people on the bottom, top, and so on. And it was separated like that. But when I was there, I personally felt comfortable, because I felt like that I was a majority there versus a minority. And like, just relating it back to the United States, I feel the opposite. And I think it's something you work on. So starting with the conversation, just to get that out there and sharing perspectives, like, we grew up differently, and I think it's important for us to talk about, we could talk about like how we grew up, our different perspectives, and see what we could do to help change the world. And I think that's what we're doing now by starting a conversation.
Absolutely. And it's so empowering to remember that the first step is just starting the conversation.
Communication is key.
Absolutely. And it's often the scariest, but once we take that step outside of our comfort zone, just start the conversation with an open mind, like you said, like, we're all learning. And then we just go from there.
Yeah. And I'm still learning. Like, this is a new process to me to start that conversation, because naturally I'm an introvert and I'd rather just be in my bed cuddled up. But I think it's my responsibility, everyone's responsibility, to try it and just keep practicing over and over. If first you don't succeed, get up and try again.
I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah.
It's so needed, and I really just appreciate us having this conversation and getting vulnerable to start asking the tough questions, because when we don't ask the questions and we're just mindlessly following this hamster wheel, then we fall into it. And just one point that I wanted to bring up of what you said of like researching and looking things up, I'm very aware that if we type in the same thing to an internet search engine, we're gonna get completely different results. And it's frustrating, because although we might want to research a hot topic that's we want to educate ourselves about. It's frustrating because how do you know the information you're getting is true and credible?
That's really important, and I think like the cookies on our computers, I feel like it's so like looking to what we want to see versus what is real or credible, what you said. So things that I started doing I subscribe to New York Times because I consider that reliable and credible because it's like a well-known news article company. But so I'll get the notifications on my phone, on my watch, and I try to stay updated and keep involved in what's going on, so I'm up to date on the most accurate information. And then I like to look at credible sources like a government website or a .org, things that I was taught in school to make sure I'm not spewing inaccurate information and then it spreads like wildfire.
Right? Oh, it's so important, and I'm interested to see how digital literacy and determining what's credible versus not is going to evolve with the times, and how we can educate young individuals that are using the internet not to fall for the clickbait, because it's too easy to click on the first thing.
It really is. I know I've been susceptible to it many times.
I still am.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's too easy, and then you're like, but like you get those advertisements that like it's the headlines that make you go into like, oh my goodness, and you click it and I'm like, what? Yeah.
The headlines are so interesting too, because a lot of times I'll be surfing on the internet, I'm not even reading the article, I'm just skimming the headlines and the bold words, and I'm like, what is this even about?
And I think like the headlines, it goes to like our subconscious. So if you see like a headline that's like outrageous, you're like, what? But then if you keep scrolling, you'll remember that in the back of your head, and that you saw something that said something completely outrageous, and like I'm guilty of it. Like sometimes I won't go back and read the article and see like what it actually was about. Maybe it said something completely different, but that's why I've been trying to do, like actually read the article so I can talk to the most credible information.
Yeah, I mean, so many layers of everything. However, the subconscious is such a critical thing that I invite us all to be aware of, because often the interactions we have online are so deep rooted in our subconscious, whether it's social validation or the array of things that impact us on that deeper level. And it's scary because we're taking real life action beneath our level of awareness. So we're interacting online and it's impacting us on this subconscious level, and in the real world we're taking actions and we didn't even realize. So it's like we're puppets or a voodoo doll, and some advertiser is funding the whole thing and we had no idea.
I know.
It's crazy. So I appreciate us being able to have a container of compassion where we're able to speak our truth and shed light on some of these things that are just in the dark.
Yeah. I think it's really important, and like communication is key. It's hard at first, but like if you throw yourself into it and step out of your comfort zone, you'll gain the foundation to keep doing it again and again. And I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely. And right now, us building this foundation of what is real talk, how can we have more of it in real life and online is so important.
Absolutely agree.
So what's one piece of advice you'd give to somebody to help them start building their personal foundation?
I would say definitely stay to your values, because oftentimes it's really too easy to go with the crowd and what everyone is doing. But take a moment to reevaluate how this makes you feel, how it makes others feel, and make a decision and think about it deeply, have a reflection on what it really means to you instead of going with the majority, going with the crowd. And by doing that, you're building your foundation of your values and what you believe in so that you can spread your values to others to make this world flourish and grow.
We're flourishing.
Absolutely.
That's such beautiful advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, this is so important. And if anyone's questioning, what are my values? Where do I start? It's so important to just pause and instead of just going with the crowd and, you know, following that, take a moment and just be with yourself and ask that question. And yes, it might be a loaded question at first. However, when we sit and have that introspection, we can really consider, what are my values? And when I've done this practice myself, I realized that when I'm trying to be with the crowd, I'm actually going against the current. And when I let go of that, you can flow with the current and life just flows. It just happens. You're not going against the resistance. And that distinction alone changed everything for me.
And like going with the crowd is so easy, and like being that kind of rock in the wave can feel weird because it's like that tension, that conflict that I know some people like conflict. Conflict's not always bad, depends on the type of conflict, but oftentimes people like to avoid conflict because it's kind of like awkward, like what happens next, the relationship. But I think it's all about how you go about it and communicating. Always comes back to communicating.
I love it. This has been such an enlightening conversation, and I look forward to more real talk.
Yes, me too. And we did have like a Zoom session for the Real Talk platform, and it went very well. We got some great feedback before we developed like an actual application. We're working with our school to kind of use as a project and a stepping stone to build the nitty gritty and the scientific computer science stuff online to build it, to kind of create that platform for everyone with all backgrounds to come together and just talk and communicate about stuff that's going on. And there's more information at teamrealtalk.com if anyone is interested.
Yes, Team Real Talk. We are coming together to have real talk. It's needed now more than ever, and your voice matters. So thank you for sharing.